A game can scare you in a lot of different ways. Jump scares with a monster popping out at you, atmosphere that makes you feel like you're in constant danger whether you are or not, and then there's Puppet Combo. Their unique brand is giving you a dark and silent place to explore around with a slasher villain lurking about. Or, just by looking at the icons on the console ports. Funny story, Murder House released last year from them, and people were so scared by the icon they asked the developer to change it. And said developer responded in the very memeable way of just saying no. Today we're going to be talking about one of their games, what effectively popularized Puppet Combo's horror. Here is my review of Nun Massacre for the Nintendo Switch. In this game you play as Mrs. McDonald. Upon receiving a letter that your daughter is ill at her Catholic boarding school, you venture out in the middle of the night to retrieve her. But little do you know, the in the middle of nowhere school is completely abandoned. All that seems to be left there, outside of you, is a freakishly tall nun with her eyes gouged out covered in black blood, and a murderous rage that is only quelled with you being brutally stabbed by her kitchen knife. This game's plot is one that you have to look for and piece together. There is an awful tragedy that happened at the boarding school and very shocking reveals about the school, the nun, and about Mrs. McDonald herself. But you gotta look for it and go through the game's different endings to be able to find it all. When it comes to gameplay, this is a heart attack turned into a video game. I mean, a first-person horror game with stealth and puzzle elements. As you trek through the boarding school, you will be solving puzzles with items you find and trying to avoid and hide from the excessively violent nun running around with a kitchen knife, causing you to have a heart attack every 5 minutes. Now to start things off, I've never played a game that had settings to toggle for its horror mechanics. Nun Massacre lets you toggle the nun's screaming volume and completely turn off the jump scare system if you wish. It's a very interesting option to give the player. Now main progression is like a lot of games of the genre. You got a bunch of locked doors you need to find the keys for. You've got rooms you can explore that have items used to unlock other areas with items for more areas. It's all a matter of exploring to find these items along with notes and videotapes tied to the actual story of what happened to Mrs. McDonald's daughter. But as you explore, you have to avoid the nun. She will patrol the halls in a semi-random fashion. You do have static that will warn you when she is close, though the nun is the embodiment of a slasher villain. Invulnerable from being killed even with the gun you find in the game, and she will sprint at you the moment you are spotted. Your only option to avoid her is run for your life and either lose her from the distance or jumping into a hiding spot hoping she didn't see you there. You can normally take a jab or two from her and live, but avoiding her altogether is a much better option. As you can probably see, this game is very retro horror. The visuals are geared to look like an old PS1 game, and a lot of the game's features and functions match that. You can only carry 3 items at once, including the lighter you need to light up the halls, so you constantly have to strategize on grabbing items you need and possibly leaving others behind. It's not a terrible system, as you can go back and retrieve dropped items later, but there is a bit of strategy to it. Though what may turn some away is the lack of a save mechanic. To be honest, you don't save your progress in this game. Ever. If you're killed by the nun, you will respawn at the beginning room twice, but if you die 3 times, 4 if you're on easy mode, it's game over. No reloading your save file, no continuing, you're booted back to the title menu and have to start again with a fresh file. You also can't close the game and come back in. You have to play the entire thing in one sitting. Granted, it isn't really that long, but a save mechanic would have been very useful. Now let's talk about fear. Puppet Combo is known for having very scary horror games, and this one is very much that. When you go into this game, you aren't slowly introduced to the nun. She's just there patrolling the halls when you get there. No tutorial, just her seeing you and immediately yelling and stabbing your face in. The scare factor here is all on audio. The boarding school is a very quiet place. No background music, just the sound of wind and rain with the occasional thunderclap from the storm outside. Until, of course, she finds you. This is an audio shift jump scare system. You go from quiet, almost silent boarding school to insanely loud screaming and music the moment you're spotted. It's like a loud sound cue in a horror movie. Just whisper, 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 and then... What makes this work so well is the time you typically get between encounters. I found myself often getting to a point of becoming more calm in my exploration that the next time she appeared, I got goosebumps and my heart was racing all over again. Now the scariest part of this system is that she will follow you literally everywhere. You're running and crouched to jump into a venting system and you think you're safe, but you turn around and she crouched into it too and is still chasing you. You have to get distance on her or she will go wherever you do. There were lots of times on stream last week where I thought I was safe under a bed or in the vents and I wasn't. Even after I got a grasp on how far I needed to run to evade her, I still got goosebumps every time her sound cue happened. It's simple, but very effective. While this heart attack inducing system does effectively just slow down your progress with you navigating and sometimes going nope as the static shows up, I found the whole mechanic kinda charming. It was fun to roam around and occasionally have that really high tension of hiding or mad dashing away from her. She is an invulnerable slasher villain, but never impossible to escape from. We should also get into hazards and endings. Nun Massacre has 5 different endings that can be achieved at different points of the game, mostly ending in an awful and gruesome death for our heroine, and sometimes hiding the story bits that are needed to understand the whole plot. One of these is achievable within the first couple minutes of the game, as there are particular hazards that cannot be escaped from. You fall into a barbed wire pit and boom, it's game over. You get a really creepy scene with the nun slowly peeking her head around and smiling before bashing your head in with her knife, and you start over again. That also brings up content and length. You will be spending a good while on Nun Massacre even though it's a very short adventure. If you know what you're doing, you can easily get through the game's good ending in around 40 to 50 minutes. But I was playing and retrying for a good 4 to 5 hours before I got anything but the early barbed wire ending. It's one of those games you play and master through trial and error, and has plenty of that trial and error for a measly $6. Next up is controls. As I realized on stream last week, this game has a good bit of analog lag. Unfortunately, all controllers do the same thing, and it does cause a bit of an issue when trying to interact with small objects like screws or cabinet drawers. You can tweak the sensitivity, but it's gonna be frustrating no matter what. Now, presentation. Visually, this game is very unique and retro. It's designed to look like an old PlayStation 1 title, and it does it pretty well. It offers a slew of different filters to have that retro look, from a CRT filter to different options to make it look like a PS1 game, a retro black and white movie, or an old VHS tape. These look neat, but can also get in the way of reading things like files and menus. You can clear it up with turning off the CRT, but many of the notes I found almost impossible to read without swapping over to the VHS style. It's unfortunate that they took away the handwritten note style of the PC version with just on-screen text that easily distorts with the filters. Now, performance I didn't have any problems with. It stayed at a steady 30 FPS, only dipping once or twice during some of my more frantic chases with the Nun. And with that, let's get into battery life. The Nun gives the original model a battery range of 2 hours and 28 up to 4 hours and 38. The Nintendo Switch Lite gets a range of 2 hours and 36 up to 4 hours and 44. The Redbox or V2 2019 model gets a range of 5 hours and 54 up to 7 hours and 28. And the OLED model gets a range of 6 hours and 15 up to 7 hours and 44. In conclusion, Nun Massacre is a terrifying game that relies on luring you into a false sense of calm only to up the volume and give you a heart attack when you least expect it. Now, on the downside, some of the features do feel a bit too dated, from the lack of a save mechanic to how many insta-death traps are around. Plus, the new style for notes make it very hard to read without swapping to specific filters. But if you're a fan of horror and want something with interesting lore you have to explore to find, and that will effectively scare the crap out of you over and over again, I found it to be pretty fun. Reviews to Go rates Nun Massacre for the Nintendo Switch an 8 out of 10. If you have any comments or questions, feel free to leave them below. Thank you for watching, and look out, there she is.